press on the fish and it tells you its name and all the rest, and you zoom in and it tells you more about it. But the aquarium is the syllabus for the biology section of the equivalent of the intercept.
Wow.
And they send packs out to the schools in the area that the teachers can use in class, and then give the kids to go and answer the questions, which gets the parents to go on campus and go in and see their new engineering room and play with their technology.
And I sent Johnny to college here.
Well, I mean, you know.
Brilliant.
And the walk to it is through the botanical gardens.
Where's this, Robert? In
QUT, Risborough.
QUT, yeah. These guys, another. I don't know why they don't get clocks working in these places. They shouldn't put them in, or just put in a digital one or whatever.
Yeah, nobody needs them now, really. Yeah. We had the usual issue. We had the registrar sent in an email around explaining to people what an hour was. So we've got a refinement this year. I think it was 6 minutes to the hour and 6 minutes past, or 7 minutes instead of 10 to and 10 past, which it had been. I obviously felt that was too generous. Yeah, I squeezed an extra 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, 10 past to 10 to is a bit much. You know?
It's hard enough though if you're in, in John Hume where there's 500 students and somebody needs to get to the south campus on the far side. It's a 9-minute walk.
Yeah.
And they've got to get out of a class that has 500 people into it.
Yeah.
Find a seat in a class that maybe has 200 people in it.
Yeah.
10 minutes, you know, it's just not enough. To do that.
No, it's not actually. Yeah. I'll go on as long as short as you want, Robert. You know.
Yeah, we're going close to the 2 hours now, anyway.
Whatever suits, you know. But I'd say they're all here, yeah. So, afternoon, everybody. You all right? Okay. So, just before I introduce Robert, sorry, wrong module. Let's start with that module bit. Before I introduce Robert there, I've just updated the module map, and you see that on Blackboard. So, if you look at version 2 there, and it's got the times of so it's got the 1 or 2 changes we had. I think we only had 1 change in actual fact anyway, with Ivan's finance session. So that's gone from number 2 to down here to number 2 again, but it's, well, you can't see this, of course. Right. Okay, the module map. And originally we were going to have a free class next week, but we don't, because we've moved the session from here. That was meant to be on the 27th of October. If you recall, we've moved it down here to the 8th of December. All right? So I've indicated this in red ink, the changes that we've made. And the second thing is the extra sessions, and the dates for those are there. Now again, to recap, of course, they're not obligatory. As you know, on the final exam we were going to have 10 questions. We'll actually have 9 questions. 9 topics, 9 questions, and you'll pick 6 that you want to answer exam questions on. Okay? So sections 1, 2, and 3, there's details there of the times of those. As I said, they're not mandatory. You needn't come if you don't want to. You needn't come to anything, of course, if you don't want to. You've got a choice as well on these sessions here. See the way we've... Huh?
Failure is an option.
Failure is an option too, of course. All right, so you can fail it if you want to. It's always an option. As is getting a distinction. So if you recall the way we set up the exam there, it was originally 10 questions, 9 questions, you pick 6. All right? It'll be multiple choice within each of those areas. I'll talk to you again about that. I'll put the exam rubric on Blackboard that will give you the instructions. So today, Robert is going to be question number 7 around business strategy. And I'll pick up on some of today's material tomorrow when we look at business model canvas. I mean, what I say about these 3 sessions here is we'll run them more as like workshops. So if you're not prepared to do a little bit of work at the sessions, I guess don't come, basically. All right? Because we try and have them interactive in that. Okay? We won't have an exam question on number 1 there, which is Michelle from McKinsey. Okay, I've decided that we won't examine that. but I do need to restrict the attendance at that to the top 40 or 50, so I'll run an attendance list in the school office. We will have an exam question on business model canvas, and we will have one on sustainability. Okay, but again, as I say, these are optional. All right. Okay, so that's the plan. Everybody clear enough on that? So just be sure and look at the module map under teaching materials on Blackboard for your module for 8064 and for 8076. I'll put it there for both of them. And I'll talk to you again about it next week, but it's going to be multiple choice. So the plan, and we'll have Professor Birmingham's section multiple choice as well, right? So the whole thing will be multiple choice. And the way we'll do it is that for each of these 9 areas, there'll be a couple of questions in each area. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to decide whether you'll answer 2 or 3 questions on that area or not. Okay? It's not like picking questions across the 9 topics. You'll have to decide your 6 topics and then answer 3 questions within each of those. All right? Again, I'll put the rubric on Blackboard because it is potential for it to be confusing. So I'll put it up there that you can see it. All right? But we have it approved now from the external examiner and that. So that's full steam ahead basically with the plan. I really describe today's session with Robert as being like the capstone session, the key session on the program, because it's strategy. It's really the area that everything else hangs off of. In fact, business strategy at the core, around assessing markets, around planning our future business plans, and so on and so forth. So of all of the sessions here that are outlined there, the different functions. If you remember the first day we talked about the functions of management. You've had a bit of HR already. Just to give you a sense, Robert, we're kind of here at number 7 there and that. So, they've covered a bit of HR, they've covered some finance. John was here on leadership. They covered some marketing and so forth. So you're getting an idea of the business functions. But this is probably the key one. And I'm not saying it just because Robert is here, but I'm saying it because strategy tends to be the key area, basically. All right. And to welcome Robert, Professor Robert Galvin, he's a colleague of John's who you met a few weeks ago. I've worked with Robert for many years, colleagues in a previous institution, and Robert worked in industry before coming into academia. He actually came in after a number of years, into his 30s before he came into industry, and as an engineer, like a lot of you, worked in electrical engineering before coming in. So I suppose he knows the technical side of the world and also applying that now into the business commercial side of the world. And when he was working as an engineer, he got promoted to become a manager and ended up having business unit responsibility and so forth. So very much sees it from both sides, from the engineer's perspective, but also from the commercial perspective. And he's a professor now of strategy. And anyway, I'll give you the web link for his biog and that, but he's written a lot in it. One of the key textbooks in strategy, and did his PhD in Cranfield with it was Kakabatsi, wasn't it, Robert? It was Andrew Kakabatsi, who'll be one of the main guys today in the whole area of leadership and business strategy and that. So if Robert doesn't know about strategy, I don't know who does, basically. All right. So it's great that he's here. It's great that he's taken the time to come here because, again, of course, it's a day or two out of his schedule and that, and we appreciate that. We appreciate the time that he's taken to do it. All right. So that in mind, when you're finished talking, because it's rude to talk when we're in class, we give our guests the courtesy of not talking. Isn't that right, gentleman in the black here? Just tell him to shut up. Hello. I'm reminding people how it's rude to talk in class, all right? But I know you can't hear me when you're talking. So we just give our guests the courtesy that's required. I forgot your attendance list. It's no big deal, right? Okay, we'll mark everybody attending. Don't worry, I left it over on the desk there. So all the materials are on Blackboard. We loaded them up there about an hour or so ago. There's a zip folder, just if anybody's any problems, let me know, but you just open it. And there's a nice bit of stuff there, Robert. I think you had 3 readings.
3 readings, yeah.
3 readings in there and 2 sets of slides. So loads of stuff. But fundamentally, we just need you to know some of the key principles today of strategy. Anybody studied strategy before? Business strategy, business planning? So there's some key tools that you got to know about. Okay. So again, thanks Robert, for taking the time. This is usually a very good interactive session, folks, and that. So enjoy it. Is it too warm at the back? Will we try and open windows, or are we okay? Or feel free to don't jump out the window, obviously, but feel free to faff around with the windows there at the back and that. And as I say, the plan is, I'll talk to you again at the end, but the plan is another workshop there tomorrow on business. It's just for an hour or so, 2 o'clock. As I say, you don't have to come. And it's a follow-on to some strategy stuff from that. So if you want to come, do. But I'll probably get you to work during the session, so just be pre-warned with that. All right, it's not going to be sitting there just looking at me. Thanks,
That's
Robert.
very cool, that is. Yeah. Asking
Gotta
people to think when they're doing a master's.
work. You're okay there for everything, Robert. And
Yeah.
park up there somewhere. Super.
Thanks for that. So I'm delighted to be here. I think this is year number, is it 6?
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah, it's year number 6 doing it. I think
Maybe
maybe 7 actually. Yeah, it's a big folder now in my PC doing it. So I enjoy it every year. So please interrupt as I go along and ask questions, ask awkward questions, ask hard questions. Try and catch me out, whatever you like. I don't mind. You won't catch me out, I hope. But give it a go if you wanna try and do that as we go along. Yeah, I was an engineer in the past. I'm not sure whether being promoted to management from engineering is a success or a failure. I haven't quite figured that out, whether I just wasn't good enough as an engineer or I was actually so good as an engineer that I'd make a better manager. So I'm really not sure which of those work. But anyway, that's the route that I took. I used to do magnetics design for my sins. I designed transformers and the magnetics inside power transformers for a number of years, and then ran that factory and went off into industry. One of the subjects that absolutely fascinated me when I got out of engineering and then was given responsibility for running businesses was that there's actually some stuff out there that might give you some insights before you spend the money running the business and buying the assets as to whether it was likely to be successful. And I just thought that was great, that you didn't actually have to do everything by trial and error, and not everything in life had to be an experiment. So as an engineer, we tended to do a lot of experiments to try things out to see if they worked. But when you were talking about organisations and people and systems, that didn't really work. Didn't really work quite as well. So it was great that there were some tools there. The tools that I started with back in the early 1990s are still around. But they've changed and they've morphed into and had new tools added to them as the world has changed. So there's sort of 2 things I want to do as we go through today. One is talk about some of the fundamental tools that we use in strategy, but also get you to think a little bit about how the world is changing and how our use of tools to think about the world needs to change and evolve in order to deal with that problem. Because nothing that we deal with in business and organisations is static. It's not like we figured out a formula to do something. So when I designed transformers back in the late 1980s, I had calculations to run to work out magnetic resonance inside a transformer core, and that's still the same calculation today. So that hasn't changed. Steel hasn't changed. Electricity hasn't changed. The magnetics haven't changed. But by God, the world of the transformer that the transformer lives in has changed around it. So unlike engineering and unlike hard technology like that, the social world that we work in is a shifting canvas on us all of the time. And we've got to try and think about what the world is like and then figure out what tools would be best to apply in those situations. So as soon as we learn a tool, we've got to learn when the tool is useful and figure out when the tool isn't useful. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of both of those things today, with a little bit of a warning that the strategy course that we normally teach is about 16 weeks long in its short version. And we've got, an hour and 40 minutes or something like that. So we're going to get 16 weeks compressed into 40 minutes. So with that little qualifier, I'm going to try and do a big piece of talk of strategy and give you all of the words that you would need to bullshit your way through an interview if somebody asked you, do you know something about strategy? So it's the bluffer's guide to doing business strategy that I'm going to try and give you today. But with some of the real hardcore tools sitting in the middle of it inside. If you pull the stuff up on here, John, you have indeed. Good man. So this is, So this is taken from one of the readings that you've got is from a book that was edited by a particularly brilliant professor called John Mangan a number of years ago, and he asked me to write a chapter in it, and it's still got some currency. It's 12 years old at this stage, that chapter, but it still has some currency. And one of the things that we developed for the chapter was this little roadmap to think about strategy, because strategy textbooks are usually really big, thick text with an awful lot of complexity inside them, because they deal with the complexity of the world and the complexity of organizations. But that's not an awful lot of use when you're trying to get started. So we tried to find a way for people in small businesses to think about the world around them in a fairly structured way and give them a way of getting somewhere. So I'm going to try and give you a couple of examples of things as we go through it, and companies as we go through the talk that we can link it to. But to try and bring it down to a very basic level, I want to give you a strategy problem, and I want you to tell me the types of things that I would need to know in order to be able to make some strategic choices. Okay, so following out of our analysis comes our strategic choices. So me and a group of friends have decided that we're going out for a walk, and we are going to go up and walk up a pathway up to the top of a mountain. Okay, and about a third of the way up to the top of that mountain on the path, we encounter an obstacle. As you do in life, as you do in business, we encounter an obstacle. The obstacle happens to be a very big boulder, and the boulder is sitting on the path. And to one side of the boulder is a sheer cliff, and to the other side of the boulder is a sheer cliff falling down into the sea. And we have some decisions to make. What should I do? Give me some strategic advice. What's the right thing to do? Or how would we know what the right thing to do was? What information would you need? You can ask me some questions. What size is the boulder? It's a really big boulder. I can't be more technically precise than that, but it's big.
I'm terribly sorry to bother you. There hasn't been a purse left in here from the last lecture, has there? Somebody's lost a purse. There aren't any purses around on the seats on the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry to disturb.
Okay, panic over. Back to our strategic problem. We have a great big boulder, so the boulder is absolutely enormous and nobody's going to push it. Even if we all get together, it's way too big for that. So it's a big boulder, a big obstacle, it's a serious problem. Is it climbable? What would you need to know to be able to answer that question? What is climbable made up of? How easy the route is over it is one of the things. So one of the things we want to do is understand our landscape, don't we? Yeah. So we want to do some sort of an analysis of the environment that we're in. What are we actually facing? So how big is the rock? How steep is the rock? How hard is the rock? Is it slippy? Is there grip? All of those sort of questions start to come in. And that in strategy we would talk about as an environmental analysis. We want to understand the landscape that we're living in. Both the rock close to us, the rock face, what's around it, what's behind it, and all of the rest. So we want some information about that. So we need to know that. What else do we need to know?
How heavy is it?
How heavy is it? Yeah, so that's still part of understanding the environment that we operate in. So climbability is, one part of it is understanding the thing that we're going to try and climb. There's another bit to that, though, that you need to know about.
What do you have in order to climb?
Okay, so I have a big belly. Will that help? Probably not. So one of the things we want to know is who have we got with us? Okay, what capabilities have we got? And what sort of equipment or resources have we got? So we want some sort of a capability analysis to understand us as an organisation, the group of people who are there, because the climbability question is what's the rock and the system that we're working with like, but also what are the people who are facing the rock like. So if we've got a few really fit rock climbers in the group and it's not a terribly big and difficult rock, well, this becomes a very easy one. We're going to go straight over that rock, that's no problem. If it's a really, really big slippy rock and it's me looking at it, I know that's not such a great idea. I really don't fancy going up there because I'm afraid of heights as well. So this doesn't help. So we need to have both of these pieces of information. So we need to do an internal analysis and we need to do an external analysis. What else might be useful to know before we go deciding? Yep.
If there is any alternative route?
Nope. So we don't just want to look at the rock and the rock face. We want to have a bigger look around here, and we want to say, hang on a minute. Before we go climbing over this rock, 100 yards back down there was a little path off to the right-hand side. Maybe it just goes around. And maybe that might be an alternative route. So we're not necessarily just going to go in a straight line blindly at this. And strategy is about trying to get in a helicopter and get above your situation and have a look at the landscape and figure out what's going on in the broader sphere of things that you're working in before we go making these micro decisions about risk and time and investment and commitment to a particular action. We want to make sure that that's the right action to take and that there aren't other alternatives. What else might you think about? Because we're starting to get back from it now. That's one of the key things to strategy, is getting back from the problem. There's a really important question that nobody's asked yet.
Priorities.
Priorities? Go on.
You got a quicker path or a safer path?
Quicker path or safer path? Yeah, so there's a risk analysis that we got to do in there as part of that. To do that risk analysis, you need to understand me, you need to understand the environment, and how we need to trade off. What? There's something else in there? You're getting towards it.
Why do you need to get that?
Why the hell are you going up to the mountain in the first place? Okay. What was the objective? Why were you going to the top? Was it actually important to get to the top of this particular mountain? Or was it just any mountain because you were just out for a walk with your friends? And if it's just any mountain that you were out to get to the top with, or it was just for keep fit, why are we thinking about climbing slippy rocks on the side of cliffs? Why aren't we just off walking somewhere else and doing that? And sometimes what happens is you start on a course of action in a business and you get so tunnel visioned in terms of this is what we're doing, you actually forget what it was you were trying to do in the first place. And it's really important to stand back and ask these big questions. What was it we were trying to achieve in the first place? What does the circumstances that we find ourselves look like? What do we look like as a bunch of people trying to do this? And then when we can put those three pieces of information together, now we could actually start to make a sensible decision about what might be the right course of action. But if we're missing any of those bits of information, we're not likely to make a good strategic decision. Any of those pieces of information are missing from our analysis, and it's likely to be a very, very weak decision that we're making. You're making it without the information that you need. So strategy on one level is really complicated, and on another level it's really simple. It is just about asking those few fundamental questions. It can be hard to get the information, but it is still about those few fundamental questions in there. So there's something about what is it that we're trying to do? Why do we want to get to the top of the mountain? What's the objective that's out there on it? Where are we and what does our environment look like? Who are we and what do we look like and what have we got as a skill set in there? And then finally, how are we going to go about implementing that decision in order to move from A to B and get there on it? And it may be because of our objective that we want to get to the top today, and that's critically important, and so we have to figure out, have we skills to go over it? Have we skills to go around it? Have we got Welsh miners with us and we'll go underneath it? Or have we got somebody with explosives and we'll blow the damn thing up and just go straight through it? So it's figuring out what have we got in the context of what it is that we were trying to achieve. Only then can you start to make the decisions about how we're going to go about doing that. Whereas a lot of people in business live here. They're stuck in the how. This is what I do. This is how I do it. And I just try and run fast really every day doing that. And never actually stand back and figure out, what was this about? Okay, is it about a lifestyle? Is it about a profit? Is it about a way of life? Is it about changing the world? What is it that I'm about in doing this business? And that makes it very hard if you live down in this space to actually hire staff in and get them motivated to do anything. Because they want to know is, why am I there? What's the purpose of this organisation? Is it important that this organisation exists? If it is, maybe I'll stay past 5 o'clock in the evening and work. If it's not, I'll go home and have a drink with my friends. Okay, and so understanding what it is we're trying to achieve, step one, where we are in an environment, step two, who we are and our capabilities, step three, and then finally, here's what we're going to do about that to try and implement it. And of course, as soon as we try and implement it, we realise that we didn't understand it all. We thought we were great mountain climbers. We thought we'd be great going over this, and we get halfway up and realise actually 3 out of the 4 of us aren't great with heights, and so we're going to have to rethink this one. And we've learned something, and we go back through that cycle again, and we trade off our risk versus the return that we're going to get out of it, and eventually we get a better decision through cycles of going around this. And so a lot of what you'll see in strategy textbooks talk about the dynamics of strategy. Strategy is a cyclical thing, and it is. It goes through a process and then goes back and starts again. And so it's in this constant learning cycle of trying things, figuring things out, trying things and figuring things out. The difference between strategy doing that and ordinary operational decisions doing that is that the strategic cycle is likely to be years long, whereas the operational cycle is likely to be in hours or maybe months. Okay, so if we're trying to figure out, for example, in a factory, how we could improve a production line, we can make the changes to the production line, run the production line, and next week or next month have some figures to know how we did. Maybe even that afternoon if it's a small line. If we've decided that we want to enter a new market with a new brand to a new group of customers that we don't understand, that might take 2 years to do that. And so the implications of getting your decisions wrong at a strategic level are much more significant than if you get a decision wrong at a local level, okay, at an operational level. So the operational stuff we learn by doing all of the time. The strategy stuff we learn by doing, but the cycles are bigger. And this explains why chief executives who are paid to do strategy are paid multiples of what people who are trained to do operations do, which is maybe why I moved from being an engineer to being in management, because you get paid a whole lot more if you get to that strategic level. And the reason for that is very simple, that if as an engineer designing a transformer as I did, I make a mistake, we have to throw that transformer in the bin. If as a strategist building a factory, I build the factory in the wrong place to build the wrong types of transformers, we need to throw the factory in the bin. And that's an expensive proposition. One transformer is okay, an entire factory probably not. Okay, and so what they say is, well, if you're paid X as an engineer, maybe we pay you 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times, or maybe even 100 times X as a manager, because if you got it wrong, we'd have to destroy the whole factory, or we'd be out a lot of capital in it. And there are the differences between those operational decisions and those strategic level decisions, which is why chief executives, you see the salaries on TV, and some of them are paid hundreds of millions to run these very large businesses, because the consequences of getting it wrong are so large, and the timelines that they deal with are so very long in terms of going to do that. So when we come to the direction setting piece, which is that top level piece about why are we going to do something, there's something that most small companies are really bad at doing and figuring out, which is actually setting the direction for their organization, or creating what sometimes we talk about as a sense of purpose, understanding the purpose of the organization. Now when we talk to small businesses who haven't thought this through, they tell us the purpose is, well, what do you think they would tell me? Oh, this small business operator with 27 staff tell me the purpose of their business is. I think the most common answer is, you get an 8 out of 10 of them. Make money. Yeah, profit. Okay. Can anybody see the flaw in that answer? What's the problem with just looking at profit? The problem is you have to do something to cause the profit. And the profit is just a byproduct. Okay? It's not the actual thing you do. You don't do profit. You do something, and if you do it well and do it right in a particular way, profit emerges from the doing of that. But if the focus is on the profit, you're never going to figure out what it is that you need to be doing. And so the smart businesses that we work with tend to be really, really clear about the purpose for that organization, why it exists, and why I exist running this business and I get paid more than that person over there trying to do the same thing. That my sense of purpose is clear, I understand why I'm here, people understand why they're in my organization, they're clear about the business definition, and I'll talk about that now in a second. They're also clear about the values that are important to us in terms of running a business over a long time. And out of that, we have a mission that we want to achieve in terms of these long-term goals on the way to achieving our purpose. So we have a sense of what we're trying to do, and everybody gets it. Okay. And if you think about, the values in that can be really, really tricky for some businesses. So if you work for a drug company that's creating a vaccine for some horrible disease in the third world, What's the purpose that you might talk about for that organisation? Saving lives. Good purpose? Yeah, sort of a nice thing to be able to say. What do you do when you go to work on Monday? Well, I save lives. Yeah, that sounds okay. That would get you up. That would get you moving. And if they happen to pay you to do that, that sounds like a pretty good purpose to have in life and a pretty good place to go. What if you work for Diageo and you make Guinness? What's your purpose? Making people feel good? Does everybody that drinks Guinness feel good? Does alcohol cause problems? Yeah. And so you get up on a Monday and you think, well, 8 out of 10 people feel better when they drink my product, and 2 out of 10 of them die of liver disease. So I think it's okay. I think it's good. Yeah. It's sort of a tricky, and if you think about that, you think, it's not 20%, it's not that high. Well, what percentage would be okay? How many people would it be okay to make the rest feel good? Yeah. But these are real decisions. These are real strategic decisions. And if you watch, what these big drink companies do, because they know that people feel good when they drink, those that like a drink, and they know that it does harm, and so they're all involved in campaigns for drinking responsibly and trying to manage the amount that people drink, and do some good, and at the same time alleviate some of the problems that it creates. But these are genuinely tricky things that we have to figure out in business. And one of the things that we know is that if we run a business that is about just saving lives and only doing good in the world, very smart people will work in those organisations for an awful lot less money than they will work in other organisations that don't do necessarily a lot of good in the world. And we know humans will trade off the profit versus the values that they want to live in life out there in it. And they come into your direction setting for your organisation. So for organisations, it's really important that they have that front end piece sorted out and they have a sense of where they go. And most of the research shows us that organisations that are clear about their purpose, that they have that clear view of what they want to go to do in the future, that there's some inspirational quality to what they're trying to achieve, that in the long run they tend to have better profitability than other firms that are out there. Not always, because there are some structural differences, but in the long run most of them tend to do a little bit better over time than others that are out there on it. But this business definition piece is also really critical in terms of being able to sort out what business I'm in and what business I'm not. Okay. Probably the trickiest thing to do as businesses are growing and developing. It sort of sounds easy that you'd be able to say what business you're in and what business you're not. But often that requires somebody to make a decision and say, we ended up in some businesses by accident, we'll shut them down because we want to focus on something else. That's hard to actually do if you're a small business. But let me give you an example of the way you might define a business for two different aspects of a very similar industry. If we talk ice cream, okay? Anybody in the room like ice cream? Yep, a few nodding heads in there. Some people like ice cream. Some people like Haagen-Dazs. Yeah. Anybody like a Mr. Whippy cone that you would get out of a van? Soft ice cream whipped in a cone. Yeah, a few people like that as well. Okay. Just think about them as two products. So essentially the same product inside the same industry. But in order to understand the way you would do business for them, you need to break them down on these three dimensions that are up there on it. So in terms of what goes into the products, what's the difference between what's in Haagen-Dazs in a tub and the actual product that goes into a cone coming out of a machine? There's actually quite a difference. They're very different products. They're very different products in terms of what goes into them. Anybody ever seen them, how they make ice cream in an ice cream van that they pull this out of? You chuck a sealed packet of chemicals into the top of it and press the button and it churns it out. So it's either powder or it's a liquid form that it goes into it, and it churns out stuff that it calls ice cream. And to be called ice cream, I think the minimum quantity of fats that it has into it is something like 32%, and then it's ice cream. Below that, it's yogurt or sorbet. So if you ever go to a yogurt bar, that's because they didn't put enough fat in it to call it ice cream. Same stuff. They just didn't put enough fat in it to call it ice cream. And so they put just enough into it. The Haagen-Dazs is actually built on cream, and it has a very buttery taste to it when you taste it, and it's a very indulgent product, and its raw ingredients are about 10 times higher per unit than what you're getting out of the Mr. Whippy van. The Mr. Whippy van sells per volume at about the same price. Yeah? So the Mr. Whippy van, £1.50 for a cone, something like that, yeah? £3 for a tub of Haagen-Dazs, but there's about 3 times as much in the tub of Haagen-Dazs of actual ice cream as there is in the little Mr. Whippy. So how is that you're paying about as much for an unbranded Mr. Whippy as you are for a very highly branded Haagen-Dazs product? Where are the difference in the costs? So, where's that? Processing. So who has the higher processing cost? Which is more expensive to make? So we know the raw materials in the Haagen-Dazs are more expensive. But their labour costs are very low because they make it in huge factories and a jillion gallons at a time out of that. So their manufacturing costs are very low. Whereas the guy in the van has to do everything once off in a small batch every single time, several times every day. So the labour costs are actually huge. And so when you buy the Mr. Whippy out of it, the process for delivering it is very, very different. Okay, it's small batch manufacturing. It's manufactured close to its place of consumption, almost in real time, hopefully close to it, otherwise it goes off overnight and you get poisoned. So hopefully close to real time, and it's relatively fresh when you get your hands on it. And most of the cost of what you're eating is the van, the petrol, the truck, the manufacture that goes into it. The Haagen-Dazs, you buy that in a supermarket, and most of what you're paying for is the ingredients plus the brand, because it's Haagen-Dazs and it's luxury, and you feel good when you eat it because it says Haagen-Dazs on the side of it. And most of what you're paying is profit back to Haagen-Dazs, isn't it? So Mr. Whippy isn't making a whole lot of money on the ice cream, but Haagen-Dazs are making a whole lot of money on the brand. And what are they selling you? Are they selling you ice cream? No, they're sort of selling you sexy and cool and nice, and the ads are all nice dark lit and dribbling little bits of lovely yummy buttery ice cream. Yeah, so there's a whole image around it that you're buying. That's what you're buying. I know it's not in the tub, but that's what they've sold you. It was in your head, and they just drew it out with the ads. And so you will go in and pay this ridiculous amount of money for this very small tub of ice cream because you don't want to look like a cheapskate if you're on a date. Okay, so you're not going to say to your date when you go back, I was at this class with Robert and he said a Mr. Whippy is much better value. That's not going to work. It's true, but it's not going to work in terms of a way of doing it. And these are two businesses in the same industry but doing it very differently. The products are different and the processes are different, and ultimately the customers are different as well, aren't they? So typically the customers that are buying a Mr. Whippy are what age? Typically. What's the age category for a cornet out of a machine on the beach? What's the average age?
10.
Yeah, something like that, isn't it? It's it's a child. Okay. No, and it's not that it's only they don't decide we'll only sell to children. We have a spread across it, but it's typically around that. And what's the average age for a Haagen-Dazs? Late 20s, early 30s, yeah? And the reason for that is that it's typically after you've bought a house with your partner and can't afford to go out anymore, this feels like a luxury. And so we'll have some Haagen-Dazs sitting in watching the TV instead of going out to the cinema tonight. Okay, so this becomes the special treat that we buy down there. I know you can get the little one in the cinema as well for the same price as the big one in the supermarket, but there you go. That's branding and marketing for you, and they have you captured. But this is the similar product, but it's different, using very different production processes and materials, and targeting very different customer groups. And you don't want to get them confused. Okay, if you're deciding to set up a business, you don't want to make a mistake on any of those dimensions. You don't want to start trying to sell Haagen-Dazs to 10-year-olds on a beach out of a van. This isn't going to work. They can't afford it. They don't have £3.50 for a tub of Haagen-Dazs out there. They want a Mr. Whippy in their hands when they get their hands on that cone. And similarly, you can't, in a supermarket, have an ice cream machine and tell people, just while you're passing by, in case you want to pull an ice cream for yourself and eat it while you do your shopping. It's not going to work, because you can't take it home, clearly. Okay. So very different ways of going about doing almost an identical business with almost an identical product, but still so different that it makes a huge difference to all of the decisions that go in and go around that. And part of being clear about your strategy in a firm is being clear about all these dimensions. What is my product? What is the process that I will use for getting that to my market? And who are the customers that I'm going to target at the end of the day? And any piece of information missing out of that, and you can't actually have a decent strategy to get you there at the end of the day. I said earlier as well that some companies have a very difficult time making decisions about who they won't serve, what companies or what products they won't serve, or what markets they won't serve. Very often when you look at some really successful companies, they're absolutely clear at the markets that they won't serve and almost have pride in doing that in that particular way. IKEA is one of my favourite stores to hate. I like it from a business point of view. I absolutely hate the stores with a vengeance. I would rather you drag me anywhere in the world than make me go to an IKEA store where they stuff you in one end and make you run like a little trained mouse around the route that they've chosen to exit 40 minutes later when all I wanted to do was go and pick up a product and get the hell out of the place. And it's designed not to let me do that. They want to control my experience. They want to decide how I'm going to shop. And then they'd like me to take it flat packed and carry it down to my car and bring it home and get screwdrivers and start putting the damn thing together. Okay, not my idea of a shopping experience for furniture. Okay, just not my idea at all. My idea for a shopping experience for furniture is to go into a nice retail store in the centre of town. Before I get there, to stop and have a cappuccino on the way. When I get to the shop, to sit down and have a chat with somebody who knows something about the furniture, to talk me through the quality of leather that they've got, to discuss the way the manufacturing is done and types of joints that they use in it, because it might actually become an heirloom in the factory, to let me know how many weeks it will be before some nice person delivers it and assembles it and sets it up in the room and polishes it for me and asks me to sit down and check if it's okay. That's my idea of a shopping experience. I've explained this to them in IKEA, that's my idea of a shopping experience, and they said, what? Yeah, it was something like that. There was a laugh involved. We don't care. Are they right not to care? Should they care? Am I part of their target market? No. So why should they care? They didn't set up IKEA to sell to me. They did not set up IKEA to sell €4,000 pieces of furniture to go into a house. That's not what they set up to do. They set up to sell to you, didn't they? Yeah. Who wants something now that looks trendy, that's easy to get home, and when my friends fall on it during a party and break it, we go, oh, that was a pity. Let's go get another one. Okay? And that's the market that was set up to serve. It was set up explicitly to do that. And if we go back up to our business definition, they're really clear about their line of products. Okay? There's a theme to everything that they do. They're really clear about who their customers are. And they're absolutely strict in the process that they have to get there. In fact, the only way they will bend a little bit is they'll rent you a van so you can bring it home. Okay, that's as far as they'll go. Even to the extent that there are people out there who know that there are people on the margins who might want their products, and they'll actually go and collect it for you and assemble it for you in your house and charge you 10 or 15% in order to do that. And I say, fine, if there's a market for that, do it. That's not what we do. That's not the business we're in. We do not want to see your house. I don't care what your house looks like. I don't want to assemble the house in there. I want you to come to my shop, take it off my shelf and give me money. And that's it. The transaction is over. I'm finished with you at that particular point in time. And the good news for IKEA is that there are lots and lots and lots and lots of customers out there who want that. And once there are lots of customers out there who want that, why would you be bothered messing around with the other ones? Okay. It works what they do. And this is the reason that I love to hate them. I hate the shop. But I absolutely love their strategic clarity about, you're not my customer. And if you don't like it, get out of my shop and stop wasting space. There are other customers who want to walk that path. You're blocking it. Okay? Stop browsing. Start buying or go home. Okay? And you can have a cappuccino if you want downstairs. In fact, we might even give it to you for nothing. But you're probably not going to like the chairs you sit on. Okay? Because they're going to be hard benches because we want you through the place. Okay? We don't want to see you hungry, but we don't want you relaxing for an hour either. We want to give you some meatballs and cappuccino and get shopping. Okay, we don't want to fill you up with carbs so you're too tired to spend money. Okay, we just want to get you something to keep you going around the place, and we give you something to keep the kids busy for a little while as well. Okay, and then we say your roof rack, and you can put the stuff on top of the roof and bring it home and figure out how to assemble it when you get there. Absolute clarity about what they do. CNN, what does CNN sell? News, yeah. They don't actually sell the news, they sell the ads that are wrapped around the news, but it's news is their product, yeah. So you can imagine, CNN was the first ever news-only channel to develop in the world. And you can imagine, you know, when they came along to the early TV channels, which were these multi-TV channels, which had everything on them, and said, you know that thing that you do between 6 o'clock and 6:30 in the evening and between 1 and 1:15 at lunchtime, we want to run that 24/7, only with American news, for American people worldwide. And forget about all of that other stuff that you call TV. And they were laughed at. They were literally laughed at. But they said, no, there are people out there who want news. Now, one of the interesting things is, who's that customer set? Go back to who their customer is. Who's their target market? So think of socioeconomic groups. Are they very poor people or typically quite wealthy people that want CNN news? World news, world affairs, finance information. Poor end, high end. High end, okay? So we've got wealthy people want this product, okay? So when I go to an advertiser and I tell an advertiser, we've got this news program, and they say, well, you know, what we'd be really interested in is if you could attract all the poor people who have no money to buy products. No. We'd be really interested if you had a channel that only the wealthy people watch, because we know we were targeting the right people with our advertising. And so all of a sudden there's a premium on people who watch CNN, because we know they've got disposable income. Okay, and very often as well, it's in hotels around the world, which is part of the model that they distribute it internationally. And so Americans abroad, in hotels abroad, again, business people with disposable income, sitting in hotel rooms with nothing else to do except sit there and watch the news and the ad. Okay, because they're not going to switch to a foreign language. They're going to actually stay on the channel. You can't even do that anymore at home. So now I have a channel with wealthy people who will watch the ads. And all of a sudden this becomes a really valuable proposition for advertisers. And CNN does really, really well out of it. Should they get into soap operas? Should they? No. They have a product aimed at a market, it does it well, and they want to make sure they're the best in the world at doing that. And if you spread your skills in too many different areas, you have problems. So if you think about it, people who want to go to the Olympics, some people want to go to the Olympics to run a 100-meter sprint. Okay. Others want to go to the Olympics to run or to take part in a decathlon. Yeah? The person who wins the 100-meter sprint in the decathlon, will they be faster or slower than the person who wins the 100-meter sprint, just as the 100-meter sprint? Why will they be slower? They will be slower all the time. Why? Why will they not beat the specialist? Yeah, because they're not the specialist. Yeah. So while the specialist is figuring out how to shave 1/100th of a second off their launch off the blocks, the other guy's figuring out how to throw a javelin, how to jump, how to do whatever else it is you do in a decathlon. They're figuring out all of these other things. The specialist is figuring out just how to beat you on this one piece. And that's where businesses become competitive, that they build a capability to do something better than everybody else in the world. And if they try and do too many things, they risk being the decathlete rather than actually being the specialist. In which case they'll do okay, but never win anything outright. Okay? And so in business, you get some businesses that are average-ish, and you get others who are absolutely brilliant at doing things. IKEA, absolutely brilliant doing what IKEA do. CNN, absolutely brilliant at doing what they do. And FedEx, another one. So if I did go and buy a couch in IKEA and I wanted to ship it from here across to Ireland, should I ring FedEx to ship my couch? What do you think they might charge me? What are you, £1,000? But they'll have it there tomorrow. But that doesn't really matter for a couch, does it? Okay, so what FedEx are good at is shipping small packages, and the strapline to a lot of their advertising is when it absolutely has to be there tomorrow. So when you need ultra reliability, particularly in the US, not quite as strong in Europe, particularly in the US, where they have a central hub, and they developed this notion of a hub in the middle of the US where all the planes fly into, the products go round in a circle and then go back out to the planes and are flown out overnight. So at about 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, the planes leave from all of their hubs, fly into the middle, the pilots go asleep, people work on all of the packages, sort them all out and put them back on the planes, and then the pilots wake up and fly them back out to their destinations, so they're there for 7 o'clock the following morning and distributed out to you at the start of business. Great way of doing business for small packages, for stuff that absolutely has to be there the next day. Terrible way to move couches around the place. Very expensive to do that, okay? Because you're going to put it on 2 planes when 1 truck would have done to get it there. But again, they know what they're doing. That's what they do. They don't drift off into doing all sorts of other stuff. And it means that somebody who has a van can say, yeah, I can get your couch there in 2 days. But they can't get your package there tomorrow, even for £1,000, because they just don't have those capabilities to do that. And it comes back to being absolutely clear about what it is we want to do in business and why we're doing it in that way. Do we understand our product? Do we understand our processes? And do we understand the customers that we're targeting? And then get rid of everybody else that sits around the edges of that. Okay. And if some people on the margins want to join in and do it, that's fine. But otherwise, just tell them to go away. It was nice knowing you, but you're not my customer. So please leave me alone and stop wasting my time. I want to serve my actual customers who will give me money for the thing that I've got as a service. And so every now and then, I get annoyed with IKEA. And then I go, but they're right. They should tell me to go get stuffed. Okay, I'm just wasting their time by having this conversation with them. I don't do it on the shop floor now. I do it when I get them in classes and with the executives and that inside it. Okay. So that's some of the stuff around the setup around strategy and this front-end decisions that you've got to make as a business. The other thing I said I wanted to do today was to talk about how the world is shifting and changing, and how we need to adapt the way we think about strategy to deal with the changes in the world. And we're in a stage now that we talk about as strategy 3.0. If anybody wants to read more of that, there's a chap called Steve Graves, has some nice videos up on YouTube, and he's written quite a good book on it. Strategy 1.0 sort of isn't of much interest to us at all. Strategy 1.0 probably runs to the early 1900s. Built on military concepts of winner takes all. We figure out, the military use this term, the centre of gravity. We figure out what is the centre of gravity of our opposition, and we go in and we blow up their centre of gravity, and they implode, and we take over, and we've won. And that's it. And that's a simplistic military mind in terms of doing that. And that has been the way that military guys have done strategy for a long time, and to some fairly large extent still to this stage, which explains why they've made a mess of parts of the world. They move in, they blow it up, and then walk away, and it doesn't quite work the way they thought when they walk away. But that's the model that's there. You figure out the thing that's at the centre of your problem, and you deal with the thing that's at the centre of your problem, and then all your problems go away. What we found out is that in latter years, the world is a bit more complex and connected than that. Okay, that maybe worked, and that's the Battle of Waterloo sitting up there. That maybe worked when Wellington, just by the skin of his teeth, beat Bonaparte in France. It made a massive change, and it sustained a change for decades after that in terms of the balance of power. Those sort of things tend not to happen today. Nobody wins a single battle, and on the back of a single battle, everything around it changes going forward. The world is a more complex, more interconnected thing than that. In the last century, the big thing that we had to try and do as we built cities and we built countries and we built what becomes modern society, the big thing we needed to do was to get people out of poverty. Because people lived in slums in city. They moved from countryside into cities looking for a better life and often got a worse life living in the slums in the cities. And part of that was actually making stuff. Food being one of the things that we needed to make more of. Housing, machinery, equipment to take away the dirty jobs, the horrible things in life, to provide the sanitation that we needed to have safe lives for people out there in the world. And we spent an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time building production processes to supply this unmet demand. And we had this huge unmet demand right the way through until well after the Second World War. Until maybe around the 1980s or so, certainly in the Western world, most of the basic demands had been met by about Wednesday lunchtime in terms of the work week. That by Wednesday lunchtime, most people had enough money made to have food, to pay their rent, to be reasonably safe and have a little bit left over for a bit of fun. And the stuff that came after that started to become optional. Stuff that I could have because I can, because I'd like to, because I want more than just enough to survive, and I want to enjoy myself, and I want some freedoms to go along with that. And that sort of changes what it is that we have to supply to our customers, because we can't just supply them with what they're in desperate need of, okay, and they're short. So just producing something doesn't mean there's a demand for it. We have to create things that get people excited about buying it and compete with other people who are trying to do the very same thing for their resources. And the other thing that comes in around the same time, late 1980s on into the 1990s, is technology. And all of a sudden we have computers that can do stuff. And then we had this wild and crazy thing called the internet. And I'm old enough now, and I'm not that blooming old, but I'm old enough to remember a day where there was absolutely no internet. We had no concept of it. And I remember the day I actually got onto the internet when it was available. I was the 27th person in Ireland on the internet. And when you got onto the internet in those days, you got a black screen and a flashing Unix cursor. And that was it, you were on the internet. There was no World Wide Web. It took a couple of years before the World Wide Web appeared and people could click at things and then pretend they actually knew how technology worked. So I actually understood for a little while, anyway, how you traverse the internet. And I knew where things were on the internet because you knew the names of the servers and you could move around on these things on it. And that changed an awful lot. And it shifted us from a world where everything we produced was tangible to where these days the vast majority of the world's products are actually intangible services or servitized products. Okay. And if you think about even the way that has changed with the technology that you use, we've shifted the way we buy stuff now. So we took a product mentality and we brought that to technology in the first place. So the first Microsoft Word product that came out, and it wasn't the first one, I can't remember who I had before that, but long before I had Microsoft Word, we had a few other products. But it came on a disc, and you bought the disc in a box. So you bought a product. It was a thing, a hard thing, in a disc. And you stuck it into the computer, and you had Microsoft Word. Now it's a provisioned service from the cloud, isn't it? Yeah. And you don't even necessarily, you can still buy it as a product, but I think it's only old people like me that buy it as a product. I think pretty much everybody else rents it as a service, okay, or figures out a way to not pay the rent and have it as a service. But we won't get into the fact that you're thieves if you do that. But we won't go there. But old people like to buy products, and people like you who grew up on service provisioning, they're provided with a service. But even physical products now have connected to them services built in as well that are quite intangible. So I changed the control system. I was just telling John about it earlier on my heating system at home. And I've now got a little gizmo sitting on my radiators, and I now have an app on my phone, and I can check what temperature the rooms in the house are, and I can turn the radiators up, I can turn them down, if I'm away I can turn it off, I can get it ready for coming home if I'm freezing cold, all of that. Is it a product or is it a service? Well, it's both. Integrated together, connected with a lifetime relationship that I now have with Honeywell who provide it, because the product doesn't work without the internet service that they provide. And they gave it to me free this year. I'm pretty sure at some point in the future they're going to charge me for the app or the service that sits behind it, because they can't give it to me for free forever. So at some point in the future they're going to find some way of getting money out of me in order to do that. And what that has done is created a very connected society with very complex patterns of working and very integrated ways of doing things. And it means that a company like Honeywell, who used to make engineering products, hard products, so thermostatic valves made out of copper, on machines, turned on lathes, drilled and welded and all of the rest, now need to understand software, internet, provisioning, iTunes, iClouds, how all of that comes together and works for them. And of course, they haven't got time to figure all of that out while they're working with their skills. So they now need to work with partners. And one of the things that we've seen over the last 15 or 20 years, and now exploding in the last 10 years, is almost no company in the world working as an isolated organization. That nobody does the whole of anything anymore. Everybody just does a piece of the job in this integrated web of things that are out there. And that makes strategizing a really, really difficult thing to do. So we've come from a stage where strategizing was to some extent quite simple. Figure out what the center of gravity is and blow it up. To figure out where you live in a network society and how you add value. And they're quite different problems. Okay, they're still the strategic problem, but they're quite different problems. We still have some businesses that run off that old mechanical center of gravity issue. So if you need to, drill a gas well somewhere in the world, you need to figure out what gas prices are going to be over the next decade and figure out how to get holes down into the ground. That sort of stuff is still fairly mechanical and long term in the way it's done. Whereas if you're trying to figure out what heating systems will look like in 10 years' time, I don't think I'll be pressing buttons on the phone. I think there'll be something clipped onto my collar or something that will know I'm getting close to home and turn the heating on for me. And it will, probably be taking my pulse and measuring my body temperature and adjusting the temperature that I think I'd like the room to be based on its experience of whether I've been turning the stat up or down. So it will learn what I like and it will figure out how to do that, and it'll do all of that stuff in the background with multiple companies connected together to do that. And I'll talk a little bit later on about where some companies are going in terms of the products that they're developing and how that's going to happen. So that's the shift that we've had over a very short period of time, really, from 1990 through to now. So really a very short period of time, only 25 years, and the world has shifted dramatically inside that space. And our problem of strategizing has grown enormously as we go through that on it. Our early answers to these shifting changes were, that look, our customers' expectations are no longer, have you got it? If you have, I'll buy it because I'm short of it. To, I'd like it cheaper, I'd like it faster, I'd like it better, I'd like it customized a little bit for me because it's special. Okay. And some firms, this customization thing is really interesting as well. Some firms are really good at figuring out how to do both, because if we customize things, it becomes expensive. If we give you just one, it becomes not terribly attractive. Yeah. And we sit between the two of these. Yeah. And Starbucks is my favorite example of a company that's managed to do both of these, and they do it in a supply chain sitting on a counter that's only about 10 foot long. Okay. So how does coffee start in Starbucks? What's the start of the process? In the shop. Let's not go back to the plantations and all the rest. In the shop.
Make your order.
Yeah, and then what do? What's the first part of the process to deliver you your order?
Write it down. Right on the cup.
Yep, so what I got to do next?
You pay. You pay it, don't you?
Yep, you paid them, but I just want to get into the actual process of producing the coffee. What's the first thing that happens? They grind coffee beans. Okay. Now, are they grinding the coffee beans specially for me? Are they customized in any way? No, it's a big sack of coffee beans into a big, huge jar, grind it out and it comes out a spout, goes onto a machine and it drips into a cup, yeah? And up until that point, everybody's cup of coffee is identical, yeah? Nothing special about it at all. And that cup of coffee, as it comes out of that machine in that particular condition, about how much is it worth? What would you pay for just a small espresso in a little paper cup? What will that cost you? Nobody drinks espresso. You're all special cappuccino, macchiato, latte, double skinnies. Yeah. Okay. It's about a pound. Okay, just for the drip. Okay, and if they can do it for that and make a profit on it because it's not special, sure it's not. It's just not special. It's just coffee in a cup, and it would be the same for everybody in there on it. So up until the point of drip, okay, this is a standard procedure to produce coffee that's absolutely the same for everyone, which means that they can mass produce, mass bag, mass ship, mass make machines, mass train people in producing it. All of that stuff just done really, really cheaply. So for a couple of cents, they can get this into the cup for you. But the average price of a cup of coffee in Starbucks is probably closer to £3, because they do magic after the drip. And that magic happens in about 6 feet. Yeah. So it starts at a drip and it's worth £1. And you, like idiots, gave them £3 for the little bit of magic that they did in the next 6 feet, yeah? So one of the things that they did was, when they took the order, they wrote your name on the cup and made it really special. Okay, because this is a cup of coffee for Robert. Okay, they know me. We have a relationship. I'm willing to engage in that relationship and pay for a special cup of coffee now, because it has my name on it. They care. They love me. They want to make it my cup of coffee. They'll do it my way. Okay, which means they'll put some milk in it and add a bit of froth, but it's mine. Okay, and so they give me this crazy list of things that they can do with it, which amount to syrup and milk and maybe something sprinkled. Yeah, and it goes from £1 to £3 in that little strip. Okay, and they manage to take the low cost of producing the coffee and add to it some marginal cost of customization, add to it a little bit of sprinkle of magic dust called marketing. Okay, and all of a sudden you have a £3 cup of coffee sitting on your table and you feel special. Okay, where in fact you've actually got a 40-cent worth of espresso with a bit of milk on top of it that you paid £2.40 for. But you know, you're happy and they're happy and the world goes on. Okay, so this specialization versus customization is a real problem for most businesses, and businesses that can crack that do really, really well. So they do all of their mass manufacturing outside the factory to some extent, up to the point of drip, and then do a little tiny bit of sprinkling magic dust on it and extracting extra money from you out of it at the end of the day. And, you know, are you buying that because you needed the coffee? Well, you may have needed the coffee up to the point of drip, but everything after that was the money after Wednesday. Okay, it was the because I like it, because I'm worth it, because I'm special, because I had a hard day, because I have a long day ahead. Okay, because I didn't have one yesterday, because I mightn't get one tomorrow, because my friend is having one, because I like to look at that one. Okay, so there's a million reasons as to why you might give them the extra £2 in order to go along with that. But think about it. You know, you nearly triple the price of your coffee for something that's fairly intangible in what it is that they're giving you. They know that, they packaged it into a premises, and then what they do is they say, now once you're used to doing that, every time you see this magic little green symbol, there will be somebody waiting there for you with your cup of coffee. All you have to do is go in and give them £3 and they'll give it to you. And so anywhere in the world you go, you can have the same experience. You trust it, you trust the brand, you trust the experience. It tastes the same everywhere you go. Okay, which to some people is a good thing, to others is a ridiculously bad thing. Okay, but if it's a good thing to you, you're willing to give them the money to do that, and they branded it for you, and they do a very good job of managing that business in that way, which is why they've got 37,000 coffee stores or something across Europe, and I can't remember, 347,000 of them in America or something like that. Some ridiculous number of stores. I think New York alone has 1,600 Starbucks around Manhattan. Yeah, so pretty ridiculous. But people want the brand and they want the experience that they've got there in it. There's a slightly different take in terms of other changes that have taken place in the world. And again, we go back to this sort of early strategy 2.0. IBM, one of the great companies of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, came out of the Second World War, did really well building computers. So they actually make machines, okay, from start to finish. They buy raw materials in, they manufacture components, they assemble machines, they sell them out into the marketplace, and they do the whole package for themselves. Go back to just 6 or 7 years ago and they sell off their PC manufacturing business. We don't make PCs anymore. So what have IBM shifted from and to? So they were a PC manufacturer, or initially a mainframe manufacturer, then a server manufacturer, then a PC manufacturer, now not a manufacturer really. What are they now? One of the phases they went through was consultancy. So we wanted to help people think through their problems using technology solutions. And so we will buy the architecture for you, we'll assemble it for you, we'll train your people how to use it, we'll show you how to manage technology to make your businesses better and more efficient. What's the latest gig that they're on in terms of where they're moving to? What's the public display that they do every now and then to show how fantastic their computers are? They play a game. What's the game? What has been the game that's been so hard for people to lose against computers that humans for up until a few years ago were winning all the time?
Chess.
Chess, yeah. So what's the chess thing about? What's IBM trying to figure out? If they were trying to help you think better and work better through their consultancy, now they're trying to develop artificial intelligence that will think better than you and sell it back to you. Okay, so this is where they're trying to go with that AI stuff. They're trying to say is that there are a whole load of things in the world that need intelligence and cognition to figure out the solutions. Not programs that actually just solve problems in linear ways, but actually use cognitive processes to figure out complex solutions to complex issues. Up until around now in the history of the world, these things have been better than computers at doing that. All of a sudden, okay, we're just starting to see the breaches of that. We're actually seeing computers beating people playing chess. Okay, so we're starting to see a company with a capacity, with a machine that has a capacity to think better than the people that it's selling that service to. Okay, and so what they want to do is they want to go to hospitals and say when people are sick, you run them through these medical machines that we make, and so we'll sell you the medical machine, or we'll partner with somebody to make it, but then we'll extract the data out of that machine and we'll give it to our brain, and our brain will tell you what's wrong with the person. And they'll do it reliably and without complaining, 24 hours a day, and they'll give you a report that an idiot can read, and so you don't need a consultant anymore. You can have somebody cheaper to actually solve this problem out. The brain does it. And so what we're selling you is the brain. We're selling you the cognition. And so this is where that company has moved from strategy 1.0, which is beat the hell out of them, to strategy 2.0, make it until they have enough of it, to strategy 3.0, figure it out for them. Okay, you're not even selling them what they want, you're telling them that you can sell them the thing that will figure out what they should do. Okay. And this is where the big race is on now, with Google and IBM and a few other big players, Apple as well are in there, around artificial intelligence, because whoever can crack the engine behind that and have the brain, can attach the brain to lots of problems in the world and sell lots of products and services back to these companies on the basis that you have the problem, we have the brain. Okay, and if you just bought our brain, you could solve your problem. Okay, so a little bit scary in terms of where it might go, but that's where it's going from a strategic point of view. These are the next big breakthroughs that are going to go there, and you're starting to see that emerging in cars now. You know, so I'm pretty confident that by the time I retire, there'll be a self-driving car to take me to the pub. I am confident of that. I'll be surprised if I'm wrong. Okay, that by the time I retire, I'll retire in 16 years or so, that there will be a self-driving car and drink driving will not be an issue. I'll be able to get in the car and say, bring me to Selbridge House, I want a pint, and it'll drive me home safely at the end of the day. The brain. Okay, the car isn't the problem, the machinery isn't the problem, the roads aren't the problem. The brain to do the driving as good as I can do. And I'm pretty sure by the time we get there, it'll be a better driver than I am. In fact, what we've started to see these guys have to do now with this technology is that they've had to make the cars worse at doing what they do because they scare people when they do it well. So 3-point turns has become a real problem for Google cars, they figured out. Because the car can do it very, very quickly, very, very accurately, really tight arcs, because it knows exactly how tight it can turn, and it can get within 6 inches of a car when it's doing it. Scares the hell out of everybody around it. people jump when they see it doing it. And so they've had to widen the arc of the car. It can go much tighter. But they've had to say, no, you frighten people when you do that. And you can't get within 6 inches of it. I know you can, but don't. Give it 2 feet, because they get scared when you get that close. And go a little bit slower. And so we're actually we're dumbing down the technology so it doesn't scare humans. Okay, so it can drive better and faster, and we don't allow it to, simply because it'll scare the humans that are in there on it. We used to joke years ago about, in years to come on aeroplanes, that there would be a human and a dog on the aeroplane, and the human would be on the aeroplane dressed up as a pilot to make the passengers feel happy that there was a pilot there, and the dog would be there to bite the human if he tried to touch anything. And we're not that far away from where we're going to be with that technology in cars. Okay, they're pretty reliable at this stage. 20 million miles driven on Google cars, and about 60 recorded accidents, no deaths, and only one that could be caused even reasonably classed as serious, and it was at 20 mile an hour after 20 million miles of driving in California, autonomous driving. So way better than any of us are going to do in our lifetimes and getting through it again. So IBM have gone through that shift. Dell, a company that came in then to beat up IBM and tackle them in some of that stuff. Dell came in, and Dell started to turn the model on its head and said, we won't manufacture and sell. What we'll do is we'll sell and then manufacture. And then Dell's world changed, and they got into trouble, and they went out of business, and now they're being reinvested again. So these markets shift all of the time, and we're all the time trying to create where we go with these things on it. And we talk about thinking about these things across strategic horizons, that you've got to do now what you do now in order to get your product out and maybe servitize later on and creating solutions for people in the long run. That's the IBM model that they've gone along to it, that products aren't enough. Products have to be attached to services, and services have to turn into solutions for customers that are out there in the future. And that requires us to integrate and bring and connect people together inside on it. I'm going to jump over this particular one just in terms of where we're going. I want to get on to this one. So this is the way we actually go about doing some analysis in sort of strategy 2.0 mode. I'll talk about how we're starting to figure out how to do it in 3.0 mode now in a minute as well. Where we look at the macro environment, what's going on in the big world outside. So we said have a look around us and see what's going on. Then have a look at our industry, and then have a look inside a little bit closer at our organisation. And at the macro level, we use this very simple tool called the pestle analysis, which is looking at the big things in the world that are changing, that are likely to shift the industry we exist in. So what's going on politically, what's going on economically, what's going on socially, what's going on with technology, how legal environments are changing, and environmental impacts that are coming along are becoming more important to us now as we realise the impact that we've had on the world around us. And we control these things. And we're not looking to figure out exactly what's going on in there, but we're looking for the big drivers and the big trends. Okay, and what's shifting them. And so what we see is markets reacting to Trump being elected in the US. And that's people doing a pestle analysis saying that shifts some of the rules in our industry, some of them for the better and some of them for the worse. So shares have gone up in oil and gas companies who are involved in fracking in the US because they reckon there's a shift on the way that will allow their technology to be leveraged in those industries. Okay. Other industries, you look at Mexico, they reckon that their country is in trouble on the basis of some of the rules that Trump wants to make in. And so the whole economy actually goes down in Mexico. And the exchange rates, I think, shifted, was it 17 or 18% over about 3 weeks, okay, because of that. And that's the world reacting to these macro forces that are sitting out there inside it. But the real little magic tool that we use in strategy is this terribly simple tool called Porter's 5 Forces. Developed by a Harvard professor, Michael Porter, back in 1980, and took the world by storm, and is still probably the most common strategic tool used in the world today. It does 2 bits of magic. One is it reminds us very simply that when we're doing a strategic analysis, it's not just thinking about our competitors in the existing firms. We actually have to go beyond that and think of other things that are outside of it. We need to think about people who might threaten to come into our industry and steal our profits. We need to think about customers who might steal our profits if they got too powerful. We need to think about suppliers who might steal our profits, or alternative industries that might spring up and draw our customers away from us. And that this strategic canvas is actually quite big and quite large in terms of the way that we go with that. So I want to take a little. I'm going to take tobacco and airlines. If I were going to create an index fund, and an index fund is a fund that takes all of the tobacco producers in the world and puts them into a fund and says you would get an average return of tobacco, and I'm going to take an index fund for airlines, and I'm going to add all the airline funds into it. I want you to put your hand in the air and tell me who wants into the tobacco fund. Hands up. You have a choice, airline or tobacco. Who wants tobacco? No one. 0. Really? Not even one? Even a half? A half. Maybe. Any forward on a half? Okay, well, just to check you're actually awake and you haven't all gone to sleep. Who wants into the airline industry? Who wants the airline fund? Okay, so about half the class want the airline fund. About none of the class want the tobacco fund. What do the rest of you want? Okay, I want everybody with a hand in the air for one of them. Okay, so airlines, hand in the air. Okay, tobacco, hands in the air. Has to be everybody else who didn't put their hand up. Come on, hands in the air. God, you're reluctant. Some of you just won't make a decision. Okay, one of the things you have to do if you're in business is make decisions. So almost nobody tobacco, almost nobody for airlines. Okay, so let me do a little live analysis of the 5 forces. Oops, if we were going along. So what do we start with first? We will start first with the airline industry. Okay. And we want to think about the piece in the middle, which is, just make sure that is a whiteboard marker before I write all over it. Yep. The piece in the middle, which is competitiveness among the firms that are in there on it. Okay, so in terms of an airline industry, one of the things that you're always interested in, are we competing on price or are we competing on brand? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow it down to the European short haul. Okay, so forget about transatlantic. Let's just think about between cities in Europe. Okay, do airlines in there compete on the basis of brand or on the basis of price? Price. Okay. Is that good news for the industry or bad news for the industry? Bad news, because what it means is that they're just driving their price down all the time. Okay. So they're under constant price pressure and margin pressure. So that's bad news for them in there. The next one up here is new entrants. Is it difficult to get into the airline industry? What would I need? How much capital would I need? About how much? Huge? What would I need the capital for? What assets? Do I need to buy a plane? I could lease one, couldn't I? I could charter, even better maybe, but I could certainly lease one. Yeah? Do I need a whole lot of capital for that? No. How many do I need to start?
Approval by the government.
One would do. Approval by the government. So I need a license. So yeah, they're easy enough to get. Yeah. You just hire people who have qualifications to fly planes and run the systems, the operations. So you need 2 qualifications in the company. The pilots and the ground operators, so the person in control of operations. Everybody else is just labour. Yeah. So we've leased a plane. We have a pilot. We have a ground operations team. What else do I need? An airport to fly into. Are they hard to find? No. So I mean, I can't get into Heathrow. So I mean, clearly they're not going to give me a slot. Okay, but you know, there are a lot of regional airports around the country that I could do a deal with. Would be delighted to do a deal with me to take a plane in, and plenty of them in Europe. So now I have a place to land, a place to take off. I have an aeroplane. I have pilots. Need some customers. How would I get them? Internet. Yeah, go out there and do some marketing on the internet. I got some customers. So not a terribly difficult industry to get into. Yeah, John and I know a chap called Porgo Cadic from Ireland who he was a teacher, and he was wandering on a beach one day on a sabbatical, and he thought, I'd like to set up an airline, and he did. Ultimately not terribly successful. It's still going. It's Stobart Air now that runs for Ryanair, or for Aer Lingus. But it's still there as an airline competing in the airline industry. Because one of the things that you need to remember when you're checking about barriers to entry into it, it doesn't mean will you be successful. It just means could you get it in and screw it up for everybody else? And the answer is yes, you can get in and screw it up for everybody else really, really easily. Is that good news or bad news for the people in the industry? That's lousy news for people in the industry. Okay, that's really, really bad news. So this isn't going so well so far. Okay, so we're going to find the one now. This is the one, power of suppliers. We're going to find that we have power over our suppliers, because you all wanted into this industry, didn't you? Yeah. So who are the main suppliers? Airlines? Or air manufacturers? How many plane manufacturers are there in the world? If we want jets, how many are there? There's really only 2. Yeah, there are a few others. Yeah, but mainly only 2. So, what's the chances of me negotiating a great deal for my first plane? So I'm going in to meet them tomorrow, and Michael O'Leary is going in to talk about buying 400 the day after. I'm not going to do a great deal, am I? I'm going to get roasted. Okay, so I won't do a great deal on the plane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Esso and I'm going to tell them we're going to use a lot of fuel. It's going to be great. Do me a special deal. And Esso are going to say, get out of my office. Talk to my secretary. I don't care. Don't talk to me. So I can't do a deal on fuel. And if I want a better airport and I want to go to Heathrow, will I do a good deal with them? No. So the 3 big costs that we've got, where we land, the plane that we fly, and the fuel that we've got, I can't really do anything about those costs. Is that good or bad news for the people in the industry? That's bad news for people in the industry. Okay. In terms of our customers, we'd be really interested if our customers were brand loyal or not, because that would affect the profit we could extract from them. So, are airline customers very brand loyal? Will they decide that if somebody else is €20 more expensive for a flight, I don't care, I'm flying with you because I love you? How much is the experience worth? Yeah, it's really tiny actually, isn't it? So it's certainly not 20 quid, sure it's not? It's not 20 quid. Is it 2? What would you switch for if you were doing it, and you had a preference? How much would it cost you to go if you have the 2 of them open on Skyscanner? Okay, and it's showing you, here's your favourite airline and your less favourite airline, and you're going to Madrid, and it's a 2-hour flight. How much would it cost you to flip? What would the most be that you'd stay with 0? 20 quid? You'd stay 20 quid, would you? Would many people in the room pay 20 quid extra? Most of the research says about 4. That's about the limit. Okay, about 4 quid, all brand loyalty has gone out the window at that point. Assuming all other things are equal, like times and availability and all of that stuff that's in there on it. So a bunch of customers that just really aren't brand loyal at all. Okay, they will take the product that's easy, because it's very much a commodity these days, isn't it? They're just moving it from A to B. You're in the same blooming planes anyway, okay, because they all bought them off the 2 same manufacturers. So it's not as though you got any great choice in terms of what you're getting. So it's not great news for this industry. And the final one then is substitute products. Okay, so let's say we want to go from London to Paris. What are the substitutes? To flying? Yeah, anybody done it? Yeah, nice experience? Got you there, didn't it? Yeah, went into a train station, arrived in Paris. A little bit less security, a little bit less hassle, about the same time overall, and so, it becomes a reasonable substitute. I don't think it's replaced it in any real way, but it is definitely a substitute. So at the very best, it's it's neutral. It's not good news, because it's not that there's no substitutes. There are. So as soon as you rise your price a little bit too much, people will start looking for those substitutes. So how do you think this airline does in terms, or this industry does in terms of profits? A truly awful is the answer. It is the worst industry on the planet for the last 40 years. Okay, truly, truly awful as an industry. It makes a little bit of money for a few years when things are on the up, when there's demand and limited capacity, and then as soon as there's demand, everybody loads into the industry with loads of capacity and blows it up, and it goes back and it loses money again, and they start this cycle over again. And there was a bit of analysis done after 9/11, and the industry, for its entire history, and we know its history because we know when jets started and when they stopped, it had never made any money. The entire industry had never made any money. Okay, the manufacturers had made money, but the actual airline industry itself had never made any money. So not a great industry to be in. Let's compare it with tobacco. If I wanted to get into the tobacco industry, okay, what would I need to do? Are there any barriers to me getting into it? How would we get in? What would we do? What do you need to do? We've decided we want to be in the tobacco industry because we figured out airlines are a little bit of a problem. And we changed our mind and changed horse, and we're all in tobacco now. ignoring the values issue that sits behind this one. Sorry, what do I need? Tobacco leaf. Hard to get? Yeah, loads of them. About 14,000 small farmers out there, yeah. Loads of tobacco leaves, no problem.
You need to build a factory,
Need to build a factory. Hard to do?
buy some machine,
Yeah, buy some machines, or just get somebody to make
buy
them.
some
Pay somebody that already has a factory. Make me cigarettes. Yeah, not hard. There's nothing complicated about them. It's chopped up leaves and a bit of paper, and yeah, away you go. No technology, nothing. Yeah, it's one of the few products that actually hasn't changed much over time.
seem you need to get the lessons from government.
Yeah, so well, we can figure out how to do it. What happens when I go to try and sell it? How do I sell it? Where do I sell it? We have a new cigarette.
What's the words?
It's in a fancy packet. This is the new packet. It looks like that. Looks like a phone. Okay, where will I put it to sell it?
Which country is not
Hey,
forbidden now?
just here, yeah. In the UK, where will I put it? Where can I show it to people?
Open market.
Where can I show? In the supermarket? No. I can't show it to them. Sure I can't.
Europe cannot. Maybe Asia.
Yeah, maybe Asia, but not in Europe. But we're in Europe, we can't do that. Sure we can't.
Yes.
I can't show them the product, so this is a bit of a problem. Do I need a brand? Or could we just call it cigarettes?
Yes.
No, we need a brand. So what do we do to advertise the brand?
No problem.
Can't advertise the brand. It's illegal. Okay. So this creates a very, very serious problem in terms of market entry, yeah? That I have a product and I can't show it to anybody and I can't tell them about it. Okay. Is that good news or bad news for the people in the industry? It's fantastic news, isn't it? So people already know my brand, and the person who wants to come in and compete with me can't tell them that he has a product. Shh, it's a secret. Okay, I can't show it to them, I can't advertise it to them. The only way I could maybe do it, and it is illegal to do it, is to give the product out to have people with it. But it's illegal to give cigarettes away as well. So I can't even give them to people to be seen with the packets around there. Okay, so fantastic news for people that are inside this. Like the best news ever in terms of market entry. It's impossible for a new brand to get going in this place. Absolutely impossible for them to get going inside. Okay. In terms of competition in the industry, price-based or brand-based? Yeah, brand-based, even though we don't advertise, it's still people buy the brand, not on the cost. And it's also illegal to advertise low-cost cigarettes because you can't be seen to be encouraging people to do it. So nobody can advertise on the basis of cost. You can only put your brand on your packet out there, and the price is hush-hush, you find out after you've bought it. Okay. So there's no price-based competition inside. Fantastic news for people in the industry. In terms of the suppliers, there's about 7 major cigarette manufacturers in the world and about 14,000 farmers in poor parts of the world. When the 14,000 farmers come to do their deal with the major manufacturers, who wins? The major manufacturers. Okay, fantastic news for the people in this industry. In terms of the customers in there, are they brand loyal or price sensitive? Incredibly brand loyal. Okay, typically over the lifetime of a cigarette smoker, admittedly they only have short lives, but over the lifetime of a cigarette smoker, they will only change their brand something like 1.5 times on average. Okay, once people start with a brand, they stick with a brand. They may change it once in their life, but usually not. And most people that start on a cigarette stay smoking that for their very, very short and painful death lives that come out of it. Yeah. And in terms of substitutes, are there substitutes? Yep, lots of substitutes out there. E-cigarettes probably the biggest hit that there has ever been on it. But the problem that all of the other substitutes that aren't e-cigarettes are is that it doesn't deal with your nicotine addiction. Okay, so we have a product that there are lots of substitutes of, like going for a walk and breathing fresh air. Okay, but it doesn't give you the nicotine hit that you were looking for. Okay, so there are lots of substitutes to cigarettes, but none of them do the thing that your body is craving and you're addicted to it, which is very, very good news for this particular industry. This particular industry is one of the most profitable industries known to man, okay, and has been for decades, and will continue to be so for a very long time, because the fall off, it is a fall off and it's slow, but while it's falling off in the Western world, it's actually rising in Asia. And so Asia still has that cycle to go through yet. So the money that they earn here, they invest in getting people smoking in Asia, and then eventually Asian governments will catch up and they'll put the same legislation in that there is in the Western world, and it'll go through that cycle there. But we're talking a long way out into the future, 20, 30, 40 years out into it. There was one big risk for that industry, which was that people would sue them because it killed them, okay? And the governments made them write on the side of the packet, if you use this product, it will kill you. You will die a horrible death, you will get cancer, there will be birth defects, all sorts of horrible things will happen to you. And now you can't claim that you didn't know that you would die when you took their product. And so everybody was forced to put it on the packet at the same time. Everybody did, and now all the consumers have no right to complain, so you can't sue them. You can't say, I didn't know I was going to die. Well, it said on the packet you would die, okay? And so you can't sue me for that in it. So the industry is very well protected now in terms of those issues, and an awful lot of money and huge profits in it. And we know that now without knowing anything about those companies. We don't need to know much about the businesses themselves. And this is where I think the magic of strategy sits, is in that ability to sit up at that level and figure out from structural things that are going on in the world, where am I likely to find money? Okay, where is there likely to be profit? And these are good analysis to do before you take a job somewhere, because these jobs pay an awful lot better than these jobs over time. Okay, there are a few jobs here in the airline industry that pay well, the pilots, because they have a license. So a license protects you a bit, but not completely. Okay, these jobs over here, the pilots get paid 100 and odd. There are jillions of executives getting paid $500,000 a year doing these jobs over here. One of the reasons is because they can, and the other reason is because of the values issue that's in there. There's a whole lot of people just won't work for them, and so those that are willing to work for them get paid even more for working for them in those particular spaces. So all of these things are just at a structural level. I'm making no value judgment about them. I'm just saying we can tell those things about businesses by just doing an analysis, sitting up at that high of a level in there inside. Okay, so I want to jump into a slightly different set just for the last few minutes to talk about some of the stuff that we've been trying to do to figure out how we do strategy in a different way now that the world is starting to change for us. This stuff is trickier because it's not as structural and it's not as obvious, and it doesn't have as many hard rules that we've got when we use 5 forces and things like that. But 5 forces starts to fall apart a little bit for us when we see some of the modern industries that are starting to emerge in there on it. So if we think about the music industry, when I grew up as a kid, in the music industry, you made money from selling records, actual hard vinyl. I know they're all sort of trendy retro now, but they were all that was available when I was a kid. Real records. And you did gigs and concerts in order to promote your records. Now it's actually the reverse, isn't it? You sort of put music out there on Spotify and you charge 150 quid for somebody to go and see you in concert. Whereas they used to sell the record and they got hard cash for every record that was sold. But in order for people to hear about your record, you had to go and do loads of gigs around the place for almost next to nothing in every bar and club in the country to get the word out there, because you had a couple of radio stations and everybody was battling for that 1 or 2 channels that were available. There was no way of getting stuff out there on YouTube, or there was no streaming. There was just no way of getting your message out. So you actually had to physically go out and bump into your customers. But they went in and bought your product. Okay. Now, well, how many of you buy music? How many of you actually paid one? One person bought, 2 people bought music? Yeah, did you pay for it? Yeah, 3 people? Okay. How many people have illegal music that they stole on their person at the moment? There's a few honest people putting their hands up. Okay, the rest of the class should have its hand up, I know this. Okay, so we're sort of happy to go and steal music, aren't we? Yeah, you just do it. You just stole music. Why? Well, everybody does it. It's not really stealing. And we make up all of these excuses. But you did. You stole music. It's an industry structural problem. Okay, that the technology has changed. The pestle environment that it operates in has shifted enormously. So when I went to buy music, the only way I could get music was to go to a record shop and do a tug of war where you give me the record and I'll give you cash. And then I took it home and I played the music. Now there's no physical equivalent to that tug of war. The music is a virtual, streamable, digital thing that can move around the place, and we actually can't have the battle over it. And so what Spotify are trying to come along and says, yeah, but there's lots of people out there who actually don't want the hassle of even choosing their music. And they would like somebody else to do it for them. Like me, I like listening to music, I know nothing about it. But Spotify has all of these wonderful playlists that people who do know about music. But am I buying the music? No, I'm buying the damn playlist. Okay, because some genius actually put it there and it's great. And when I listen to it, I go, well, that was obvious. But I had no idea how to do that myself. So I'm willing to pay a tenner a month or whatever it is, and let my kids get onto the free one so they don't go to jail for doing it. Oh, I feel better because they paid for music. Well, I paid for their music, which, yeah, a weird sort of way of doing it. But anyway, so that gets paid for. And they're trying to say is that, look, it's not a product that we're actually giving you, which music was to some extent. It's not a service even really that we're giving. It's a solution to a problem that you've got. Remember we talked about those 3 horizons? That they're moving the delivery of that product through to a service model and onto a solution to a problem that you've got. My problem is that when I have people around for dinner, I want to play good dinner music. I have no idea what that is, but somebody on Spotify does. Okay? And I can go through 5 or 6 of them, and then somebody comes in, oh, I don't really like that. No problem. Is that better? Or somebody, have you got? Yep, I have it. Okay, and all of a sudden I'm a genius with this music in the house. It's fantastic, and it streams wirelessly, and it's lovely. Okay, so they're providing a solution to a real world problem that I have, and I have money and I want to spend it on. I haven't quite figured out how to do that for younger people yet, because you guys sort of know your music and know what you want and know where to find it on the internet for nothing, and steal it. Okay, or borrow it maybe. I know you stole it. Actually, you did. Yeah. What about Google? What did they sell? Do they sell search? Did anybody ever pay for a Google search? No, so they don't sell search, do they? What do they sell? Advertising. Okay. So Google is the equivalent of, think about it, the physical world, because I think it helps to try and take that Google own a road. They built a road to bring you from Newcastle to London. And rather than charge you a toll on the road, which would be selling you the road to get there, they put advertising hoardings along the side of the road, which you much look at as you go by, and they charge the advertisers for the hoardings. And that pays for the road to go there. Yeah. Because every time you go onto their page to do a search, ads pop up around the place, which is the advertising hoarding that they're giving you. And they're really smart, so when the car passes a particular hoarding, it knows who's in the car, and it knows what you're looking for, and it puts a relevant ad on the hoarding in front of you, which we're actually starting to do in the real world now as well. Okay, but that's what Google do. They've managed to do that and change that model so that they actually create a product and give it away for nothing in order to charge for an entirely different service from a different set of people. Okay, and that's sort of unique between the value creation and the value capture. And they figured out that quite well. We create value over there for people, and we'll capture the value from somebody else. Okay, the music industry still creates the value, but they haven't quite figured out yet how to capture it. They lost their ability to capture it in the tug of war where you give money in the shop and the record comes back, and they never quite figured out how to turn that into something else. Sure, they make money now from touring and all the rest, but nowhere near what that industry used to make 30 or 40 years ago. It was a very, very profitable industry back then. Not quite as profitable anymore. Okay, and it sort of survives on the back of, there's a lot of people who want to be artists and share their music with the world, and even if they're not getting paid terribly well for it, they will go ahead and do that. So an artist, if you play a Spotify track, I think it's 0.03 of a cent or something they get if you're playing it on it. Like, it's really, really, really tiny in terms of how it's out there. So they haven't quite figured out that model of value creation and value capture where Google has inside of it. Who are these guys? Sorry, it's ABCXYZ, not ABX actually. Yeah. Deliberate mistake. ABCXYZ. It's the alphabet, isn't it? Whose alphabet? Well, they own Google. Yeah? So Alphabet is the holding company now that Google is in. It started off as Google, And when they started off Google, they said at the start, let me get this out of the way. They said at the start, in their initial letter to investors, we're not a conventional company. We don't intend to become one. As part of that, we also said that you could expect us to make smaller bets in areas that might seem very speculative or even strange when compared to our current business. And one of the problems that they had is that Google becomes this big monster of a business, and the stock market wants to know how Google is doing. And hidden in that was all the other money that they were spending on autonomous cars, on Nest heating systems, and all sorts of other weird products that they've got, glucose monitors that you stick on your skin. And what the market said to them to do was that, actually, you know what, we'd just like to see Google, and then you can put all of that other stuff in another package called Alphabet. And so they have Alphabet, which its biggest company is Google, and then all of the other stuff sitting inside it. And that allows the investors to see the focus thing that they need to see around Google. Is Google still the best of the world at being Google? Is it wasting its money on some of these other products? And where are those cash flows going? Because some of the investments in some of those, trial products that they're going at, moonshots as they call them, some of those were in the order of, 200, 300, 400 million, just for a month to fund it. Some of them were spending $10 billion on them over 2 or 3 years to have a crack at something. That came to absolutely nothing. And so the investors started to say, actually, guys, I know you were great and you developed Google and you made us all a fortune, but we'd really like to see what you did with that 10 billion. So a little bit of transparency in the numbers that we go around. There's also an interesting thing in terms of the way Google does its innovation now and the way it develops its business. Because part of the problem that we've got with doing strategy is doing a 5 forces is difficult when we don't understand our industry boundaries. So can anybody tell me what industry that exists in? What is it, first of all? Not a Bible. I know it looks like a Bible from the outside, but what is it? It's a phone, is it? Yeah. What's the thing I least use it for? Phoning people. Yeah. I mean, that is the least thing that it gets used for. I mean, I don't know. Twice a day, maybe. You actually phone somebody. Everything is a text. Everything is an email. Everything is a game or a video or music or something like that. So, is that in the phone industry? It would be very hard to understand its competitive properties if I were analysing the phone industry, wouldn't it? I'd have to understand something about gaming, music, yeah. PC, because it has Microsoft Office on it now, so it's a PC. It's quite a powerful PC in terms of the stuff that it can do. Okay, the screen isn't huge, but good pair of glasses, I can still read it. So it's a really difficult product to analyse using 5 forces, and it's changing very, very quickly. Okay, it's evolving at a very rapid rate. So I can't really wait the time to do a 5 forces analysis, do a pestle analysis, and see those changes evolve in order to figure out what to do. What I have to try and do is, in the company that's involved in making it, I have to be the best at the technologies that are in it, so that when opportunities arise, we can apply those technologies to the new opportunities that come out. I can't wait for the opportunity and then build the capability. I've got to build the capability and then jump on the opportunity as it arises. And that's been a big shift in strategic thinking. We've moved from a position where we started off saying that what we were was we did an external analysis and then we designed the company to meet the needs. Now we actually start off with figuring out our capabilities and then finding the needs to use those capabilities on. Because the markets are changing so rapidly in terms of the technologies that are sitting in around these things. Fundamental change in the way we've been going around doing strategy. And yet at the same time, sitting in behind all of it are some very simple rules that you can either sell a product based on price or you can sell a product based on some differentiation factor to it. It's either something very special that you sell to the world or it's something that's no frills. And Porter tells us that we can have one or the other but not both, because you can't actually be the cheapest in the world and the best in the world at the same time. It's a bit like your specialization problem if we go back to decathlon runner. You can't win the 100 meters and be a decathlon runner at the same time. Okay, you've got to decide what you are in life and go after one of these things. And so either you have the best phone in the world, okay, or you make copies. Okay. Apple get around that a little bit, don't they, by taking their older technology and allowing it to be sold for a while afterward at slightly lower prices. Okay, so they've spent the money on the R&D, and they still sell the iPhone 5 as a 5C, I think it is now, and it's still available to it. And so what they're doing is they're saying is, yeah, look, there's a little bit of a market just hanging below the high end. So we start off with a really differentiated iPhone 7, or iPhone 8. What are we on now? 8, is it? 7? What are we on now? 7? 7. iPhone 7. I've lost track. And sitting behind that we have a 6 and we have a 5. Okay, but we're not coming back down to the 1. You know, we're not still selling 1. We leave that to somebody else to go and do that because there just isn't enough margin in it for us. It wouldn't be worth us getting involved in those things in there, and I've got to focus on it. And that's because sitting behind all of these pieces is the supply chain, okay, and a value chain for creating it that says, look, in order to deliver margin, we need a set of capabilities along here that are our primary activities, where we have inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, and a service component to it that drives margin in a particular way. That's supported inside by an infrastructure, our secondary pieces and our support activities in our business. And the business has to be designed to deliver the products and services that you're delivering to your target customers. It's not a generic thing. You can't have a company that delivers differentiated products and costs and products that are the cheapest in the world. They can either do one or the other, but they can't do both at the same time. Okay? So you have to design your organization, your entire organization, with the alignment around what you're trying to do, which goes back to this idea and strategy of connecting all these bits together. I said at the start, you know, we need to know where we are and who we are and what we're trying to do. And it's only when we get all them lined up that we actually start to see good strategic performance in organizations. We know what it is we're trying to do in the world, what our purpose is. From that, we identify our customers, our products, and our processes, and then we design an organization that's capable of doing that and nothing else. So IKEA systems are designed at designing and delivering IKEA furniture, nothing else. Okay, they're no good at producing phones. Okay, not set up to do that. They would be dreadful at it. They're not even good at producing furniture to sit in shops that people like me would like to go in and have a cup of coffee while we look at them. Okay, they're designed just to do one particular job, and that's the job that they're the best in the world at doing. And often the reason that companies don't do that is because they're afraid to commit. They're not sure that they've actually figured out what the market is, and they're afraid to commit all their resources to it, and they become decathletes. And what they find is that when they decathletes out there in the world, that there's a sprint expert, there's a hurdle expert, there's a javelin expert, and they get beaten by everybody. And so they come second in everything and never actually win out there in the marketplace inside that. When we're trying to do an analysis around this stuff on it, we've got to do it in a very different way than the way we do 5 forces. And it's a bit like trying to peel back layers of an onion to figure out what works. Now what we do is we try and find out that when a customer buys a product or service from us, why did they buy it? What was it that we did well that allowed us to win that order? If we understand that, then we can try and understand what's sitting behind it in terms of our assets, our capabilities, and our core technologies. What's in our business that makes it special. And then we try and figure out what's core to us. What have we got that nobody else has? And we invest in that so we can develop more of these, so we can have more success for those outputs. Okay, so we sort of got to peel it back into the organization, and then we've got to feed it back out into the world outside of it. But strategy these days, it often starts in this place and figuring out what we're good at and then bringing it to the world, strategy from the inside out, whereas strategy 2.0 was often strategy from the outside in. And before I finish, I just want to link it to what John is going to do tomorrow on the business model canvas. Business model is one of these ideas that has sort of taken the entrepreneurial world and startup businesses by storm, because it brings a lot of bits and pieces that are strategy onto one page. So he's actually going to give you a very powerful model of what a business is like on one page. But there's a reason that we've ended up needing it that comes out of this problem of a changing world becoming more complex and trying to do strategy based around resources and competences. And so I'm just going to get there in a couple of seconds inside it. So for a capability to be a capability, and just try and stick with this train of thought with me as I go through this. It's a little bit tricky to hold the thread to. A capacity to be a capability must be a routine. It must be something that you have the capability of repeating. Being able to do something once isn't a routine, and therefore it can't become a strategic capability, and it can't be something that you can claim gives you a strategic advantage in the world. For it to give you a strategic advantage, you must be able to do it reliably over and over again to that desired standard. Okay. So getting lucky once at something isn't a strategic capability. And sometimes companies get lucky and then they go bust. You see one product for them and you never see anything from them again. So capabilities have to be valuable to the world, repeatable, deployable, and hopefully we can scale them. They're extendable. We can bring them out into the place. That becomes the baseline for something being a capability inside it. There are some capabilities that help us sense opportunities out there in the world, seize opportunities out there in the world, at a higher level transform existing capabilities into new capabilities. So just having a capability is grand, but as the world changes, you need the capability to develop new capabilities. Okay? So this is one of the reasons we talk about it, the difference between training and education. That we can train you to